everybody how great you are.
Save the best for last.
Would you like to? I know how to pull a Cheryl Schumann.
Imitation being the greatest form of flattery. Give it up once again for Cheryl Schumann. Go, Kat, go. This is a broad spectrum. This is a small piece of the diversity that you can get. Let's back up. You guys are supposed to be getting to know me. What I am first and foremost is I'm an activist. I was in the first Earth Day, for God's sakes. I'm turning 60 years old. We ended a war. We worked for equal rights for women in the workplace. How the heck did I get here? If you would have asked me 42 years ago when I became a cannabis consumer, and let's be serious, it was all recreational. I could have never imagined this day. But I've been through a number of causes, and suddenly while I was busy working for right and freedom to marry, medical cannabis became a top-level issue in my mind because my dad was dying. And we all get to issues a variety of different ways. It was really very interesting for me in the period of 3 years. Oh, my hand's just shaking like crazy. Let's try this one. In a period of 3 years, I went from working for freedom to marry, being a high-paid accounting consultant, to essentially impoverished, showing up at every medical cannabis activism rally that there was, and making meds for kids. Not newfangled meds, not something brand new, something that our great-great-grandmothers knew about it. Something that was taken away from us 80 years ago. Oops, this hand's doing it now too. Let's go back. Everyone's hit this topic as we've gone, but we haven't called it by its true name. It's oppression. It's what sexualizes. And hey, let's give it its true name here. Let's call it cannabis. Marijuana is buying into the same hate that took this useful plant away from us. Don't call it marijuana. Let's call it cannabis. Let's call it by its true name. Let's call it the medicine it is. And the continued oppression just appalls me in Washington State, where we were among the first states to reach out and say, we're over it, guys. We have watched our legislators drag their feet across 14 years without any legislation for medical. Suddenly, once we had legislation for medical, oh my God, we got legislation around this, and now we had a new initiative that said, hey, we moved past that, guys, the electorate has. Now we want recreational adult use. Now, suddenly, we have the state in conflict with us, and we're taking huge steps backwards as we step with the foot of oppression, again, on the neck of medical cannabis users in Washington State. And the state is looking around going, guys, I think you misheard us. So the oppression continues. The oppression continues in many ways. There are no employment securities. I can use medical cannabis in Washington State, but I cannot necessarily keep my job if I choose to do so. They'd much rather have me using OxyContin. That's oppression, guys. It's oppression when you feel like you can't use Kush creams if your elbow aches at your child's soccer game. That's oppression, folks. Let's start calling that all what it is. The minute we hide, we allow oppression to win. We have the voice of experience here. You know what the fight for freedom is like. You lived through it. I suggest to you cannabis is waiting merely for its own Berlin Wall moment. That moment when you will throw off the yoke of oppression and say, I consume cannabis, one of the safest products, plants out there. And decriminalization does not pass the test of defense of our plant or freedom of the plant. And taxation does not pass the test of freedom of our choice of medicine.
Legalization!
We are about legalization, are we not, Joyce? Sing it to the rafters, my sisters.
Yeah.
Sing it to the rafters, my next generation. I am so proud of you all. I have a CannaCon too. You know, the thing I've noticed is they're all smart as whips and a little bit oppositional defiant, and I kind of like that. You wanted to know who I am? I'm Grandma Cat Jeter from Washington. That's exactly who I am. I'm all about freedom.
Deep green.